Your Brain at Work, by Drive. David Rock. Introduction. It's 7:30 on a Monday morning. A woman named Emily closes her front door, kisses her family goodbye, and gets into her car. She's just been promoted, and as she drives toward the freeway, she's filled with a quiet excitement for the week ahead. She wants to make a good start. Halfway to work, an idea strikes her, a brilliant concept for a new conference. She repeats it over and over in her head, concentrating hard, trying not to lose the idea as she navigates traffic. By 8 o'clock, she's at her desk, ready to flesh out this new vision. She turns on her computer, and then she sees it. The awful truth. 200 new emails begin to download. 50 messages on her company chat. Dozens of alerts from 2 other programs. A wave of anxiety washes over her. Her excitement about the promotion begins to fade. Just answering the emails could take all day, but she also has hours of meetings and 3 projects due by 6 o'clock. 30 minutes later, she's only answered 20 emails. She tries to speed up, reading emails while listening to voicemail. Her mind drifts to her kids, to a promise she made herself to be a better role model, and in that split second of distraction, she accidentally deletes a voicemail from her boss. A jolt of adrenaline snaps her back to the present. She stops typing. She tries to prioritize the day's projects, a conference proposal, marketing copy, hiring an assistant, but nothing comes to mind. Her brain feels stuck. She goes back to the emails and just tries to type faster. By the end of the hour, she's replied to 40 emails, but now there are 120 new ones waiting. Her brilliant idea from the car is completely gone. If that feeling sounds familiar, that sense of being pulled in 1,000 directions, of your brain working against you, of feeling overwhelmed before the day has even truly begun, then you are in the right place. Because today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the most complex and powerful object in the known universe, the human brain. We're diving into Drive. David Rock's masterpiece, Your Brain at Work. This isn't just a book about productivity, it's the user manual for your mind that you never knew you needed. For years, Drive. Rock has advised top companies like Microsoft and IBM, not by teaching them new business strategies, but by teaching them about their own brains. He's taken hundreds of complex neuroscience studies and distilled them into simple, powerful strategies for overcoming distraction, regaining focus, and working smarter. By the end of our journey today, you will understand why your brain gets so easily overwhelmed, why it's so hard to focus, and why emotions can hijack your thinking in an instant. But more than that, you will have a new language to understand your own mind, and a new set of tools to direct it. You'll learn how to stay cool under pressure, how to collaborate with others more effectively, and how to create change, not just in yourself, but in the people around you. This is more than a book summary. This is a guided tour of your own brain at work. Book summary. To begin this journey, I want to introduce you to a metaphor that Drive. Rock uses throughout the book, one that will change the way you think about, well, thinking. Imagine your mind is a small theater. And on the stage of this theater, there's a spotlight. Anything that is currently in your conscious attention, an email you're reading, a memory you're recalling, an idea you're trying to understand, is an actor on that stage? These actors can come from the outside world, like the sound of a notification on your phone, or they can come from your inner world, like a memory or a worry that jumps up from the audience onto the stage. This stage is your prefrontal cortex. It's the part of your brain right behind your forehead, the biological seat of your conscious thought. It's what you use to plan, to decide, to solve problems, to inhibit impulses. Without it, you couldn't even form the thought, I need to get milk at the store. It's the thinking part of your brain. Now, here is the first profound, and slightly terrifying, lesson from Drive. Rock's work, That stage is incredibly small. In 1956, a psychologist named George Miller famously discovered that we can hold about 7 items in our mind at once. But modern research shows it's even less than that. Nelson Cowan, another researcher, found that the real number is closer to 4. Just 4 actors on the stage at any one time. 4 numbers, maybe. 4 long words? It gets harder. 4 new, complex ideas? Nearly impossible. And it gets even more limited. Another study found that the number of things you can hold in your mind with perfect accuracy, without any degradation, is just 1. A single, solitary actor. This is why Emily felt so overwhelmed. She was trying to cram hundreds of actors, emails, projects, worries, ideas, onto a stage designed for just a handful. Her brain wasn't failing, it was simply hitting its biological limit. It's like trying to run a modern, high-definition movie on a computer from the 1980s. The hardware just isn't built for it. But the size of the stage is only the first limitation. The second is the energy it requires. That spotlight shining on the stage? It consumes a tremendous amount of power. Conscious thinking burns through metabolic resources, glucose and oxygen, at a startling rate. Drive. Roy Baumeister at Florida University found that our capacity for things like decision-making and impulse control is like a limited bucket of resources. Every time you make a hard decision, you use up some of that resource, making the next decision even harder. This is why it's so easy to get distracted when you're tired or hungry. It's why you can drive a truck all day on a familiar route, a task run by the highly efficient, older part of the brain called the basal ganglia, but you can feel completely exhausted after just an hour of intense planning or creative work. Your ability to think clearly is a finite resource. It drains like a battery. So what would Emily have done differently if she knew this? This is the take 2 part of our story. Instead of diving into her emails, a high-volume, low-value task that drains her mental battery, she would have prioritized prioritizing. Prioritizing is one of the most energy-hungry tasks the brain can perform. It involves imagining the future, comparing abstract concepts you haven't seen, and making complex value judgments. It's the mental equivalent of a triathlon. So, in take 2, Emily arrives at her desk, sees the flood of emails, and feels that same wave of anxiety. But this time, she recognizes it. She closes her laptop, turns off her phone, and walks to a whiteboard. She gets the projects out of her head and into the physical world, writing down conference, hire assistant, writing, and email catch-up in separate boxes. This simple act frees up her tiny mental stage. She's no longer using precious energy just to hold the ideas in her mind. Now, her brain is free to do what it does best: compare them, see the relationships between them. She realizes hiring the assistant is the hardest task, the one that requires the most fresh mental energy. She decides to tackle that first. She spends the next 40 minutes on that single, high-impact task. By the end of the hour, she has identified her top candidate and scheduled an interview. She's made real progress on something important, instead of being stuck in the reactive churn of email. She treated her mental energy like the precious resource it is. She did her hardest thinking when her mind was freshest. This is the first rule of working with your brain, not against it. Conserve your conscious thinking for what matters most. Now, let's turn to Emily's husband, Paul. While Emily struggles with the sheer volume of tasks, Paul is facing a different, but related problem. He's an IT consultant working from home, and he's staring at a 50-page brief for a software project, the biggest of his career. The proposal is due in less than an hour. He'd received the brief 4 days ago, but when he first looked at it, it just seemed too complex. It hurt his head to think about it, so he got distracted by something else and put it off. Now, with the clock ticking, He tries to build a budget in a spreadsheet, line by line. But he's lost in the details. There are too many variables to hold in his mind at once: software design, installation in 500 stores, credit card security, staffing. His mental stage is completely overcrowded. He can't even figure out where to start. He panics. With 5 minutes left, he takes a wild guess at the cost, adds a big markup to be safe, and hits send, 5 minutes late. He's frustrated, anxious, and he's just sent a sloppy, unprofessional proposal that could cost him the biggest opportunity of his life. Paul's problem illustrates the next critical insight about our mental stage. Not only is it small and energy-hungry, but some actors are much harder to get onto the stage than others. Thinking about something familiar, like what you ate for breakfast, is easy. The memory is in the front row of the audience, ready to jump on stage. But thinking about a complex brand new project is like trying to build a new character from scratch, using 20 different audience members from the back of the theater. It takes a huge amount of effort. This is why we procrastinate on complex tasks. It's not a moral failing, it's a biological one. The brain is wired to conserve energy. Thinking about something new and abstract is metabolically expensive, so our brain naturally resists it. It feels like a physical strain because, in a way, it is. So what does Paul do in his take two? He recognizes that feeling of his head hurting. He knows his stage is overcrowded. So instead of diving into the details of a spreadsheet, he does the opposite. He simplifies. He opens a blank document and asks himself, what is the single most important goal here? He writes, accurate pricing. Then he simplifies the entire 50-page project into one core concept: software for thousands of small transactions. He's taken a dozen complex actors and replaced them with just 2 simple ones. Now, his stage is clear. With this clarity, he sees a new strategy. Instead of building a budget from the bottom up, he chunks the project into a few high-level pieces. Just like you can remember the phone number 7-238115649 more easily by chunking it into 7-2-38-11-56-49, Paul chunks the project into 4 manageable parts. 1. Project plan. 2. Research. 3. Write software. 4. Install. Now, instead of 30 competing variables, he only has to think about one chunk at a time. He puts project plan on his stage. He immediately remembers his system for pricing this kind of work. He puts research on stage and remembers a similar job. He gets to write software and realizes he can't possibly price that yet, but he can give examples from 2 similar past projects. This simple schematic saves him hours of guesswork. Within 30 minutes, he's built a simple, logical proposal. He sends it off 15 minutes early, with no typos. He's turned a moment of panic and failure into one of clarity and professionalism. He did this by honoring the limits of his brain. He simplified complex ideas, he chunked information into manageable pieces, and he carefully chose which actors to put on his stage. He made the tiny mental apartment of his working memory feel spacious and organized. But there's a third limitation of this stage, one that trips up even the most intelligent people. Let's go back to Emily. It's 11 a.m. and she's walking to her first big meeting with the senior executives. As she walks down a long hall, her cell phone rings. It's an unsuccessful job applicant she needs to let down gently. While trying to be polite on the phone, she realizes she's completely lost. She can't remember the directions she was just given. She's trying to hold 2 things in her attention: find the room and talk on the phone. Just 2 things. Why is her brain failing? She gets to the meeting 5 minutes late, flustered. During the meeting, her phone buzzes with an email from the woman she wants to hire. Their meeting needs to be rescheduled. Emily tries to respond to the email while keeping one ear on the meeting. As she types, she feels a little dizzy, almost nauseous. Her brain is doing something it doesn't want to do. "Emily?" The CEO's voice cuts through her fog. "I was just asking if you'd like to introduce yourself." She stammers a thank you, says a few generic words, and sits down, worried that she's just made a terrible first impression. What happened? Emily, a brilliant presenter, just fell apart. This is because of the third rule of the stage: the actors can only play one role at a time. You cannot perform more than one conscious mental task at once without a significant drop in performance. This is a phenomenon called dual task interference. The scientist Harold Pashler showed that when people do two cognitive tasks at once, their cognitive capacity can drop from that of a Harvard MBA to that of an 8-year-old. When Emily was trying to listen to the meeting and write an email, she wasn't multitasking. She was switch-tasking. Her brain was rapidly switching its single spotlight of attention back and forth between the two tasks. Every switch costs energy and time. And with each switch, you lose context. It's profoundly inefficient. A study at the University of London found that constant emailing and text messaging reduces mental capability by an average of 10 IQ points. For men, that effect is 3 times greater than the effect of smoking cannabis. Our always-on culture of continuous partial attention is, quite literally, making us dumber. So how do we cope in a world that demands multitasking? In Take 2, Emily's approach is different. When her phone rings in the hallway, she knows she can only focus on one thing at a time. Getting to this important meeting on time is the priority. She lets the call go to voicemail and arrives at the meeting calm and on time. During the meeting, when her phone buzzes, she resists the urge to check it. She knows she'll be introducing herself soon and needs her full attention. She switches her phone to airplane mode. Instead of being distracted, she spends the next 10 minutes focusing on each person in the room, remembering past conversations, building a rich mental network. When it's her turn to speak, she is present, confident, and sharp. She comes across as the strong leader she is. She isn't a superhero. She has the same brain with the same limitations. But she has learned the rules. She knows that her conscious attention is a precious, single-lane road, not a 10-lane superhighway. She chooses to do one thing at a time, and do it well. But what about the distractions we can't control? The ones that come not from our phones, but from inside our own minds? Let's check back in with Paul. He's just sent his proposal and has an hour before his lunch meeting with the client. He wants to use the time to plan the project team. He gets out a blank piece of paper, and a telemarketer calls. It takes 5 minutes to get her off the phone. Then, a ping announces new emails. One is from a friend about a school project they're working on. It takes him 10 minutes to respond. Each time he tries to restart his planning, it takes more effort to focus. His mental energy is draining away. Then his mind just wanders. He thinks about a poker game, then about how his desktop is messy, then he opens an old file he'd forgotten about. The phone rings. It's Emily. He's torn between talking to her and preparing for his meeting. Suddenly, he looks at the clock. It's time to leave. He's accomplished nothing. His mind was like a young puppy, sniffing around here and there, going everywhere except where he wanted it to go. Why is our attention so easily hijacked? Part of it is our brain's novelty bias. For millions of years, our survival depended on noticing anything unusual in our environment. A rustle in the bushes could be a predator. We are the descendants of the people who were easily distracted. That ping from a new email is the modern-day rustle in the bushes. It's almost impossible to ignore. But the bigger challenge is internal distraction. Our brain is in a constant state of what's called ambient neural activity. It's always processing, reconnecting, reconfiguring. Thoughts and images are constantly bubbling up into our awareness. Most of them are like random audience members jumping on stage for a second and then leaving. But if you're not vigilant, one of them can grab the microphone and hijack the whole show. Staying focused, then, is not so much about holding on to the right thought, but about inhibiting all the wrong ones. This process of inhibition, of keeping unwanted actors off the stage, is an active, energy-intensive process. It's like having a bouncer at the door of the theater. This bouncer is a specific part of your prefrontal cortex called the ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, or VLPFC for short. It's your brain's braking system. And here's the problem. Your brakes are part of the most fragile, energy-hungry part of your brain. Every time you use your brakes, every time you resist a distraction, hold back an impulse, or stop yourself from saying something you shouldn't, you use up that limited resource we talked about. Resisting the first cookie is hard. Resisting the 10th is almost impossible. So in Paul's take 2, he knows he needs to do some delicate, energy-hungry thinking. When the telemarketer calls, it's a wake-up call. He realizes he can't afford any more distractions. He turns off his computer, silences his phones, and clears his space. He creates an environment where his brain's bouncer doesn't have to work so hard. With the stage cleared, the idea he was searching for comes back to him. He remembers the perfect supplier for the project. He makes one focused phone call, and together they map out a plan. He's prepared for his meeting. He's calm. When Emily calls, he can be fully present with her. He managed his distractions not by trying harder to focus, but by making it easier for his brain to focus. He gave his bouncer a break. So far, we've learned that the prefrontal cortex, our mental stage, is small, energy-hungry, can only do one thing at a time, and is easily distracted. But there's one last limitation, and it's a big one. The actors on our stage are high maintenance. They need everything to be just right to perform well. Paul is now in his car, driving to the lunch meeting. He's feeling relieved, relaxed. So relaxed, in fact, that he's on autopilot. 10 minutes down the road, he realizes he's driving in the wrong direction. He's taken the route to his daughter's school out of habit. The jolt of anxiety heightens his alertness. Now he's focused. He starts thinking hard, working out a new route through back streets to save time. He's in the zone, his brain working at its best. But then, as he gets close, he worries he'll still be late. He starts to panic. He misses a turn. He's over-aroused, and his performance falls apart again. He arrives 1 minute late, flustered and tense, while his clients look perfectly relaxed. In that short drive, Paul experienced the full spectrum of mental performance. This is explained by a century-old discovery called the Yerkes-Dodson law, which shows that performance follows the path of an inverted U. At low levels of stress or arousal, performance is poor. You're too relaxed, on autopilot. At high levels of stress, performance also plummets. You're panicked, overwhelmed. The sweet spot is in the middle, a state of engaged, alert focus. Drive. Amy Arnston at Yale discovered the neurochemistry behind this. The prefrontal cortex needs just the right levels of two key chemicals, norepinephrine, the chemical of alertness, think adrenaline, and dopamine, the chemical of interest. Too little, and you're bored and unfocused. Too much, and your brain's networks essentially shut down. The prefrontal cortex is the Goldilocks of the brain. It needs everything to be just right. The good news is, you can learn to manage your own brain chemistry. If you're under-aroused and can't focus, you can increase norepinephrine by creating a sense of urgency, imagining the negative consequences of not finishing a task. Or you can increase dopamine by focusing on the rewards of completing it, or by injecting some novelty or humor into your work. If you're over-aroused and stressed, you need to quiet the prefrontal cortex. You can do this by getting ideas out of your head onto paper, or by activating other parts of your brain, focusing on your senses, like the feeling of your feet on the floor, or doing something physical, like taking a walk. In Paul's Take Two drive, he knows he needs to be alert. He pictures the meeting to raise his adrenaline just enough. He puts on his favorite music to lift his dopamine. He stays in that sweet spot of focused calm. And in this optimal state, his mind is free to rehearse his presentation. He arrives early, prepared, and confident. He learned to be the conductor of his own neurochemical orchestra. But what happens when you do everything right? You manage your energy, your focus, your distractions, your arousal, and you still get stuck? Emily is back at her desk. She has 10 minutes to come up with a brand name for her new conference. She tries to brainstorm, but her mind immediately gets stuck on one theme: sustainability. Her list is sustenance, sustain, sustaining business. She doesn't like any of them, but her mind is locked in. She's hit a roadblock. A mental impasse. This is a critical moment. Because sometimes, the prefrontal cortex, the very part of the brain we rely on for conscious thought, is itself the problem. Drive. Mark Beeman at Northwestern University studies these moments of insight, the aha moments that solve impasses. He found that insights don't come from focusing harder. In fact, they come when we focus less. When you're stuck on a problem, your prefrontal cortex is often locked onto the wrong solution, like Emily was with the word sustain. This strong, active circuit is inhibiting weaker, more distant connections from being made. To have an insight, you need to quiet the noise. You need to let go of the dominant thought and create space for a quieter, more subtle signal to emerge. This is why our best ideas often come in the shower, or on a walk, when our conscious mind is relaxed. Just before an insight, brain scans show a burst of alpha waves in the visual cortex. The brain is literally closing its eyes to the outside world to hear a faint whisper from within. The people who have the most insights aren't necessarily smarter. They are more aware of their own internal experience. They have a quieter mind and better cognitive control. They are good at noticing when they're stuck and consciously shifting their attention. So in Emily's Take Two, when she gets stuck on the sustain theme, she recognizes the impasse. Instead of trying harder, she does something counterintuitive. She stops. She calls Paul for a few minutes, completely changing her focus. In the middle of hearing about his day, a new, unrelated word pops into her mind: relax. She gets off the phone and plays with this new theme. A relaxed future. Then she hits another dead end. She looks at pictures of her kids to generate a positive emotional state. And then, suddenly, a new idea bursts into her awareness: future-proof your business. It's perfect. The energy from this insight pushes her into a state of flow, and she produces some of her best work. To solve her creative problem, she had to get her conscious, linear mind out of the way. This brings us to a character I haven't formally introduced yet, but who has been the hero of every Take Two we've seen. This character is the one who notices you're distracted, who recognizes you're stuck, who chooses to reappraise a situation. In our theater metaphor, this is the director. The director is the part of your awareness that can stand outside of your experience and watch the show. It's your capacity for metacognition, thinking about your thinking. It's often called mindfulness. It's the faculty that allows you to observe your brain's automatic processes without being swept away by them. Neuroscience research, particularly a groundbreaking study by Norman Farb, has shown that we have two distinct ways of experiencing the world. The first is through our narrative circuit or default network. This is our autopilot. It's active when we're thinking about the past or future, ruminating, daydreaming, and interpreting everything through a filter of what it means to us. A cool breeze isn't just a sensation, it's a sign that summer is ending, which makes you think about your winter coat. The second is the direct experience circuit. This is active when we are paying attention to the raw data of the present moment, through our senses. The cool breeze is just the feeling of air on your skin. These two circuits are inversely correlated. When one is active, the other is quiet. When you are lost in thought, you are literally less aware of the world around you. A beer doesn't even taste as good. The director is what allows you to choose which circuit to use. It's the ability to notice when you're lost in the narrative and gently bring your attention back to the present moment. People who practice this, whether through meditation or simply by paying more attention to their inner state, develop a stronger director. They have thicker neural pathways in the parts of the brain associated with attention and self-awareness. Having a strong director gives you choices. You can notice your stage is getting tired and take a break. You can notice you're about to get angry and choose a different response. You can notice your mind is stuck and decide to quiet it. By understanding your brain, you give your director a script to work from. And by practicing paying attention, you give your director a stronger voice. You are facilitating self-directed neuroplasticity. You are literally changing your own brain. This ability to direct our own brain becomes even more critical when our emotions get involved. Up to now, we've mostly been talking about the thinking brain. But the brain is not a logic machine. At its core, its primary purpose is to keep you alive. And to do that, it has an overarching organizing principle: minimize danger and maximize reward. This is the job of the limbic system, the emotional center of the brain. Every moment, it's scanning the world and asking, is this good for me or bad for me? This creates two fundamental states: a toward state of engagement, curiosity, and reward, and an away state of withdrawal, fear, and threat. And here's the crucial part: the away response is far stronger, faster, and longer lasting than the toward response. As Jonathan Haidt says, we are the descendants of the people who paid a lot of attention to a rustle in the bushes. The brain is like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. When your limbic system detects a threat, even a subtle social one, it triggers an away response. This floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline, and it hijacks the resources from your prefrontal cortex. That small, energy-hungry stage we talked about, it goes dark. Your ability to think clearly, to be creative, to solve problems, plummets. You become more defensive, you make accidental negative connections, and you see the world through a lens of pessimism. Let's go back to Paul's disastrous lunch meeting. He's about to answer a question about the project timeline when a memory of a past project that went wrong flashes into his mind. That memory triggers a threat response. He feels a sickening feeling in his stomach. He wants to push it down, to suppress it. But research by James Gross at Stanford shows that suppression doesn't work. When you try not to feel an emotion, you're still just as aroused internally. In fact, suppression makes things worse. It consumes huge cognitive resources, impairing your memory, which is why Paul couldn't even remember the question he was just asked. And it literally makes other people uncomfortable. Like secondhand smoke, your suppressed emotion stresses out the people around you. So, what's the alternative? The answer lies in using the prefrontal cortex to quiet the limbic system. One powerful technique is labeling. Research by Matthew Lieberman at UCLA showed that when you put a simple, symbolic label on an emotion, using just a word or two, like anxious or frustrated, it dampens the limbic response. Naming the feeling gives you a sense of control over it. It engages the thinking brain, which acts like a brake on the emotional brain. But sometimes, the threat is too strong for labeling alone. This is what happens to Emily during her lunch with her new bosses. Her new role is filled with uncertainty about the budget, about her team, about whether her ideas will be approved. And her sense of autonomy, of being in control, has decreased. Certainty and autonomy are, to the brain, survival issues. Uncertainty on its own lights up the amygdala, the brain's fear center. And a lack of control is one of the most potent stressors we can experience. Studies show that the perception of control over a stressor fundamentally alters its impact. It can literally be a life or death issue. Emily is drowning in uncertainty and a lack of control. Her limbic system is in overdrive. Labeling her anxiety isn't enough. She needs a more powerful tool: reappraisal. Reappraisal is the act of changing your interpretation of an event. As Kevin Oxner at Columbia explains, our emotions flow from our appraisals of the world. If we can shift the appraisal, we can shift the emotion. When you find the silver lining in a dark cloud, you are reappraising. You are consciously choosing a new story. In Emily's take 2, she notices her anxiety rising. She labels it, but it doesn't go away. So she reappraises. She changes her interpretation of the meeting. Instead of seeing it as a test where she might fail, she reinterprets it as a chance to get to know her new bosses and learn how they think. This single shift in perspective calms her limbic system. Her prefrontal cortex comes back online. She is no longer defensive. She is curious. And the meeting is a success. Reappraisal is the killer app for emotional regulation. It's metabolically expensive, it takes effort and a strong director, but it's a skill that can be learned. It's the key to staying cool under the most intense pressure. This brings us to the final act of our story: collaborating with others and facilitating change. Because as hard as it is to manage our own brain, it's even harder when other people's brains get involved. The human brain is a social animal. Our survival has always depended on our ability to connect with and understand others. Social needs, like the need to belong, are not secondary, they are primary needs, wired into the same networks as our need for food and water. Being ostracized, for example, activates the same brain regions as physical pain. Drive. Rock synthesized years of social neuroscience research into a simple, brilliant model called SCARF. SCARF stands for the 5 key social domains that the brain monitors constantly, triggering a strong threat or reward response. They are: status, our sense of importance relative to others; certainty, our ability to predict the future; autonomy, our sense of control over events; relatedness, our sense of safety with others, friend or foe; fairness, our perception of fair exchanges. A perceived threat to any of these domains can send the limbic system into overdrive, shutting down rational thought. Let's look at Emily's disastrous first conference call with her new team. She used to be their peer. Now she's their boss. This change has created a status threat for everyone. They feel a drop in relatedness. She's no longer one of them. The situation is filled with uncertainty. When Colin makes a joke that falls flat, Lisa perceives it as an attack on her status. Her threat response kicks in. She attacks Colin back. The call spirals into conflict because everyone is operating from a threat state. Their thinking brains are offline. Emily's mistake was failing to create a sense of psychological safety before trying to get work done. In her take 2, Emily recognizes the social danger. Her goal is not to make a decision, but to build a team. She scraps the agenda. The call becomes about getting to know each other, about finding common ground. She increases relatedness. She gives them autonomy by asking for their ideas on how the team should work. This simple shift turns a room full of potential foes into a group of friends. It moves everyone from an away state to a toward state. And in that state, collaboration happens effortlessly. This brings us to our final scene, and perhaps the most difficult challenge of all: changing other people's behavior. Paul is on the phone with Eric, a supplier who has messed up a project. Paul is angry. Eric is defensive. Paul's first instinct is to give feedback. He even tries the classic feedback sandwich: a piece of praise, the criticism, and another piece of praise. It backfires completely. Why? Because feedback, no matter how constructively you frame it, is almost always perceived as a status threat. It implicitly says, "I know something you don't. You are wrong, and I am right." This triggers a defensive, away response. The other person's brain shuts down. They're not listening, they're preparing to fight. Paul's next strategy is to drill down into the problem, to analyze what went wrong. But focusing on problems activates all the negative emotions associated with them. It creates a downward spiral of negativity and blame, which kills creativity and makes it harder to find solutions. Finally, Paul just gives Eric the answer. He tells him what to do. But this also fails. Why? Because giving someone else a solution threatens their status and their autonomy. Nobody likes to be told what to do. And even more importantly, people rarely commit to a solution they didn't come up with themselves. An insight you have yourself, that aha moment, comes with a burst of energy and commitment. An idea given to you by someone else feels foreign and is easily rejected. So if feedback doesn't work, problem solving doesn't work, and giving advice doesn't work, how do you help someone change? The answer is to stop trying to put the solution into their head, and instead help them find the solution that is already there. You must help them have their own insight. In Paul's take 2, he recognizes that Eric is in a threat state. He doesn't give feedback. He doesn't analyze the problem. He focuses on the solution. He asks, "Let's think about what we can do to rescue the situation." This moves Eric from the past to the future, from an away state to a toward state. Then, Paul stops trying to think for Eric. He starts helping Eric think about his own thinking. He asks simple, high-level questions that activate Eric's director. Tell me what your goal is here, in one sentence. What other directions might be worth trying? These questions quiet Eric's mind. They help him get out of the weeds and see the bigger picture. They create the mental conditions for insight. And sure enough, Eric has his own aha moment. He realizes he needs to create a new set of expectations with the client. The energy from this insight creates a positive state and a clear path forward. The conversation took less than 10 minutes. Paul didn't solve Eric's problem. He created the environment where Eric could solve it himself. He facilitated self-directed neuroplasticity. This is the heart of true leadership, coaching, and creating change in others. You don't change people's minds. You help them change their own. Commentary. As we come to the end of our journey through your brain at work, what is the one big idea, the central lesson that ties everything together? For me, it comes down to a simple, liberating phrase: that's just my brain. When you feel that irrational flash of anger because someone cut you off in traffic, that's just your brain's limbic system reacting to a perceived threat. When you find yourself procrastinating on a big, important project, that's just your brain trying to conserve its precious energy. When you feel a pang of hurt because you weren't invited to a meeting, that's just your brain's deep, primal need to maintain social status. Understanding this doesn't excuse our behavior. But it separates us, the director, from the automatic, machine-like processes of the brain. It gives us that crucial half-second of space between stimulus and response. In that space lies our power to choose. The knowledge drive. Rock shares in this book is not just interesting, it is empowering. It gives our director a language and a toolkit to work with. We move from being passive passengers in our own minds to being active pilots. The world today is not designed for our brains. We live with Stone Age minds in a digital age of infinite distraction and constant social pressure. The principles in this book are not just about being more productive at work, they are about finding a sense of calm, control, and effectiveness in a world that seems designed to create the opposite. So how can you start applying these ideas, right now, today? Here are 3 simple actions you can take. First, prioritize prioritizing. Tomorrow morning, before you open your email, before you check your phone, take just 5 minutes. Ask yourself, what is the one most important thinking task I need to accomplish today? Write it down. Then, schedule a time to do it, ideally when your mind is fresh. Protect that time ruthlessly. This single habit will transform your relationship with your workload. Second, practice the art of one-word labeling. The next time you feel a strong emotion bubbling up, anxiety, anger, frustration, just pause. Take a breath. And in your mind, give that feeling a simple, one-word label. Anxiety, anger. Don't judge it. Don't analyze it. Just name it. You will be astonished at how this simple act of naming can dial down the emotional volume and bring your thinking brain back online. And third, play against yourself. The drive for status is one of the most powerful forces in our brain, but it can create conflict and competition. You can get all the neurochemical rewards of a status increase without threatening anyone else by focusing on your own improvement. Pick one small thing you want to get better at. It could be anything. Then, track your progress. Celebrate the small wins. The feeling of being slightly better today than you were yesterday is one of the most sustainable sources of motivation and confidence there is. That was a summary of Your Brain at Work by Drive. David Rock. We've explored the grand tour of the mind today, but a summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. The real magic happens when you travel there yourself. The book is filled with stories, studies, and subtle insights that can only be fully appreciated by reading it. It's in those quiet moments, when a particular story or a simple phrase connects with your own life in a way you didn't expect, that real change happens. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time. If anything we've talked about today has resonated with you, I truly encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just learning, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you direct your own mind. Also, if you found this journey valuable, and you want to continue exploring the world's most powerful ideas, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It lets me know that this work is making a difference, and it ensures you won't miss our next dive into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning, and keep growing, together.